Regeneration, Rebirth. We're in the house today, and we have a very good friend with us, Drew Bex, Toronto's finest gospel hip hop artist. We're so delighted to have you this evening, Drew.
Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Good. Tell me, I always want to find out what was behind the name Drew Bex.
So, I'll summarize the story because it's a little complicated, but essentially that was my birth name. Was Drew, actually, not even Andrew, just Drew.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother gave me her name, which was Beckles.
Okay.
So that was actually my birth name.
Okay.
But certain events happened in my life where I ended up with my father's name.
Okay.
As a government name. But when I was deciding on what artist name I wanted to use, originally I came up with some different names that were, like this is before Google, but you would still know that these names were, other people had those names out there.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, okay, let me pick a name that is unique to me.
Right.
So I said, you know what? I'm going to go with the name that my mother gave me, but just put a little twist on it.
Right.
So that's how I got Drew Bex.
I love it. It's a beautiful stage name.
Yeah.
It's catchy. It has a ring to it. It has a presence to it, and so hooray for that. Yeah.
It was actually now that I think about it, was actually my friend Promise, who was another well-known Christian rapper from the city, who said, why don't you just use, like he was in the room when I was thinking of names, and he said, why don't you just use Drew Bex? So, because he knew my story and everything. So
I knew something was behind it. Yeah. I knew
which
there
camera
was.
am I looking in? Which camera am I looking
Yeah, any one of them. You can look at any one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I knew there was some sentimental thing behind that name, and so I'm glad that you were able to clear it up with us this evening.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's good. So Drew, I remember when I first met you,
Mm-hmm.
right? You came to Aaron Mills now called Praise Cathedral.
Mm-hmm.
You wanted to join the youth choir, so you came. I was in the basement. You came down there, and I was in the kitchen, which you came you came to me and said you'd like to audition for the choir. You were a teenager then, and I was standing in the kitchen, and I said, "Okay, sing me something." You remember what you said? You said to me, I don't know any gospel songs. I only know soul songs.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, sing me what you know.
Yeah.
And you remember what song you sang?
I remember the story, but I don't remember the song.
I can't remember the song either. So I think it's one of them Temptation songs or whatever. And I thought, silky voice. And from then you joined the choir. But we want to know, when did you realize that you were a hip hop artist? Because you started in choir, and you were a big part of the tenor section. It was great.
Aaron Mills Tenors, ET.
Yes,
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
So the rapping part, I actually, so like you said, I remember that moment as well. I just don't remember the song, but joined the choir, and of course I got plugged into the church and got to, get around other young guys like me.
Yes.
And one of those guys, of course, was my friend Andrew.
Yeah.
And we were just both hip hop fans.
Mm-hmm.
And
So Andrew was the hip hop guy. I thought it was Stefan.
yeah, well, I mean, Stephen was more of an R&B guy, actually. Stephen and Mark were R&B guys. Stephen, Brian, and Mark were R&B guys.
Okay.
Me and Andrew were the hip hop guys.
Okay.
And we, there was a talent show. I remember there was a talent show, and we were asked, like, "Are you guys gonna do something?" And we were like, "Well, I don't know. Like, what are we gonna do?" And if memory serves me right, that's how we started with the rapping, because we said, "Okay, you know what? Let's do a rap. Let's do a rap for the talent show."
Yeah.
And I remember doing it, and people liked it. And me and Andrew, after that, were inspired, and we formed a group called the Wise Sons.
Oh,
I remember that.
Okay.
And then later, later we got together with Stefan and some other guys, and we originally were gonna do this mega group where it was like singing and rapping.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
But when all was said and done, it ended up just being like 4 of us,
Yes.
and we just said we're all gonna rap, and that's how we formed the group Christ Style.
Yes.
Yeah,
So-
Christ style was heavy stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, mind you, the church was not ready for hip hop,
it was
rap.
new. It was new. Yeah.
Yeah, it was new, and people were like, "Well, I can't understand clearly what's being said and stuff like that." But I felt that in everything that we do, there is a time for just supporting,
Yeah.
and that was kind of lacking. But you mainly push through, which I did admire that about you, because even when Christ style broke, you still continued,
Yeah.
and here you are today. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I mean, you were definitely one of the early supporters. I remember clearly, like you having us over and telling us, like, okay, this is more than music. There has to be a leader. There has to be someone who handles the spiritual side, or who leads in the spiritual side. There has to be someone who, handles the business side. I remember that very clearly. So I thank you for that. You were definitely one of the early supporters back then.
All right,
So-
all right, good, good. Music is eternal. It was created by God. It's not man who created music.
True.
And so one of the problems over the years that the church got into, not being able, it started to labeling music, and this music is devil music and that. I mean, I know some music, yes, will represent
Yeah.
falsehood, but the true sense of it is music is from God, and if it's used to praise and worship God, hooray! I mean, it doesn't matter the genre, because I remember when I came into the church, I was a secular artist outside of the church, and when I came in, we got a lot of rap for. We were told that we were a Rastafarian group and we were singing reggae and because we were introducing it to the church,
Yeah.
and the
Tongues of
church.
Yeah.
Tongues of Fire?
Yeah, Tongues of Fire, but we were before Tongues of Fire.
Okay.
There was a group before Tongues of Fire where we got, at that time, only country and western
Oh, wow.
groups were, it's only when you sing country and western songs that you're accepted in the church in those days. So, we went in and started doing calypso because that's our culture.
Yeah.
Calypso, reggae, ska, and those things. And we got a lot of beatings for that. but we never stopped. We never stopped. We were still respectful to the leaders and to the church. But eventually, guess what they're doing now in church? They're doing ska and all of these, and everybody accepting it now. So you see, it's just a matter of continue and doing what you're doing.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
Because you know what, I when I really look deep into music, I'm thinking, how dare us trying to put God in this box, that this is God music, when God is the creator of all things. When you look outside and you see trees, you see all different species. So don't the pine tree can't say you're a devil tree to make
No, it's true.
you're
Yeah.
a devil tree. And it shows me that God has variety. God is very creative. So any music that gives glory to God, genre or not, is to God is accepted.
To God be the glory,
Never
yeah.
mind in this. I mean, you don't expect me to sing something like 60 years ago. And I need people to understand that 60 years ago, the song that the church was singing, it was the song of the area, so it was secular.
Yeah.
And because when I listen to those old songs, those non-Christian songs sound just like Christian songs because those were the tunes
That was the
of
time, yeah.
those times. And so people want to hang on to this past as if God is not confined to any box. If God say create me music, he gives you what to create.
I agree,
And
100%.
I believe it's more contents than genre. I believe in that.
Yeah, let me ask you, were you prepared then and even now for the rejection of the church, if the church decided to reject your
Yeah.
genre of music?
So back then, because of the support from people like you and so on, we at first felt like, oh, this is great. We're getting support. But then when we started, the more popular we became, and we started going out and going to other churches and so on, and we started dancing because we didn't only rap. We had a
I
whole
know.
like dancing and everything, right? And some of
Our
those,
presentation,
and some of those dances were, of course, modeled on the things that we were seeing
Yeah.
in the secular world, right?
Yes.
So then we started to experience more like, well, maybe you guys shouldn't do the dancing. Maybe you guys should tone it down. We started hearing different things like that, and we're like, oh, not everyone loves this, right? So we weren't prepared. Well, speaking for myself, I'll say I wasn't prepared, but I had a reality check. And when that reality check came, I just said, okay, well, I basically chose to listen more to the voices that were supporting than the ones that were, because I knew within my heart that
Exactly.
God had given me this talent and told me to use it.
Yes.
And we were inspired by other groups like Cross Movement in the U.S.
Yes.
You know what I mean? They were doing their thing.
Yeah.
And people were coming to the Lord and so on. And we were like, if they can do it, we can do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
As far as now, there's still resistance, especially one of the biggest heartbreaks or heartaches that I have is that the white church, if you will, has seemed to embrace what we're doing more than the black church.
Yes.
And we're like, well, we are from the black church, but we're not embraced there.
Yeah.
But the white church are the ones who will book us and fly us out and pay us all this money
For real.
and whatever, put us up in hotels. They're the ones that will do that. But our own, people will not do that, right? Because they still see it as, just culturally, it's still seen kind of as devil music, right? So that's something that breaks my heart because it's like, oh man, like I would like to, as a matter of fact, something that I'm consciously doing in like from this year forward is trying to build more of a bridge between the gospel church, the black church, and what we're doing because I've been traveling a lot and basically it's mostly the audience is mostly white and I'm like, but I want to speak to everybody, of course.
Yes.
But I really want to speak to my community.
Yeah.
I just wish that
yeah,
they were
yeah.
more. I just wish that they were more open to hearing it.
Yeah. But that's not only in rap. That's not only in rap. It's in all genre. You will find, because I've heard choir talk about that, the whiter church will more embrace them and give them a shot than the black churches. It's not just rap. So you don't feel anyway, because I've heard choir, big choirs talk about they stay in the white church because they embrace them more. Our people, I'm not sure what they're looking for, or they would want to stay in the past.
Yeah.
But God is not in any box that we should box him into.
Yeah.
So stay in here at the river until you come, Lord
And
Jesus.
something I want to emphasize quickly is not to bash the black church because one thing that myself and a lot of other artists like me have found is that they embraced us when it came to our talents.
Yes.
But when there's a lot of times when things became uncomfortable with like, especially, like race relations and so on. And you start to see, okay, I'm not necessarily receiving the same support on that level as I would have received amongst my, the black church.
Yes.
So sure, they embrace my artistry,
Right.
but are they really embracing me as a person? And I'm not saying they're not all embracing us as people, but there's this thing that's like, okay, we're starting to see that when the mic goes down and becomes about the person.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like maybe.
It's our own.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. When the mic drop, we're still with our people. 'Cause I guess it's a level of understanding. We understand each other
Mm-hmm.
in music and out of music. So we understand the culture. So that, yes.
Yeah. So, in terms of Toronto, how do you find the music uh, ministry here in Toronto comparing to, well, the States? Is there a lacking in support? Um, because I've heard there are a few outlets uh, for artists in Toronto, but it's not big enough to handle what you guys are doing.
Total different experiences. Like before, COVID and everything, when I traveled to the States, I could sell out a show. I could literally walk down the street. Like I've been to something called South by Southwest, which is in Austin, Texas, every year. And you go there, and pretty much you go there as an artist, and I've been booked to perform there a couple times, and it's like you can perform and then leave, and as you're walking out, people who saw you perform are trying to book you right away. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And like you're trying to book. It's just total different environment.
Yeah.
Whereas here, I'm like trying to get people to come to my show, and it's like 10 people, and they're all related to me, and it's just like,
Yes.
like like I'm trying and hustling and trying, and you go to the States, and it's just like
Yeah.
there's so much.
Yeah, it's music.
Opportunities.
Music is bigger in this. There's a market in the States for music in general, because it's not just hip hop that is struggling.
Yeah, just music. In general.
But music in general. Toronto or Canada is a place where it's very reserved when it comes on to music. It's not as liberated as in the States, where you have producers will come up to you and approach you like what you just said. Here, it's you have to be in that circle.
Yeah.
There's a little circle here, and if you're not in it,
Yeah.
you're gonna have serious problems.
And it really comes down to two factors. One is simply just numbers. Like there just isn't like the population of Canada
True.
is smaller than the population of California.
Yes.
So it's like
That is true too.
population wise, and then you have demographic wise. You know what I mean? Like there's just a smaller amount of people to work with.
True.
Yes.
True.
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 So whereas in the States there's so much people that you're bound to have. Like even if a small amount of people like your music, it's still a lot of people. You know. Whereas here there just isn't a lot of people. So there's a lot of talent here though. And what's been happening is the people in the U.S. are recognizing the talent that's here.
Yes.
So they are coming here now and trying to get the talent, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
But one thing I want to say is it's amazing because look at a small country like Jamaica of maybe 3 million people, but yet their music is more stronger,
Yes.
and I'm wondering why.
Well, I would compare
Comparing
that.
to
I would compare that to like a place like Quebec, right?
Uh-huh.
Quebec, which is obviously within Canada, has their own like
Music.
their own like culture, their own everything.
Yeah.
Support each other. They have their own actors, their own.
So
everything.
it's a support
Right?
mechanism then.
Yeah, and Toronto is one of the things that makes Toronto great. Is also one of the things that makes it a little complicated, which is that it's so diverse
Yes.
that one group does not necessarily, or one culture does not
That's a
necessarily.
good point. Yeah.
Yeah, one culture is not dominant,
Yes.
so it's hard to really, like in Jamaica, everyone's kind of the same culture.
Yeah,
right?
that's a
yeah,
good
that-
point.
that's-
I've never thought of it that way.
Yeah, right?
But that's true. Yeah.
Everybody
It's
wants
so
to
diverse here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That everybody wants to
You're not going to appeal, and
yeah.
you're not going to appeal to the masses. You might appeal to these few people, and so on and so
Yes.
on. Whereas in a place where everyone's kind of the same culture,
Yeah.
you'll appeal to more.
Get,
You know?
You get them
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
that's
that
a
makes
good- that's a
sense.
good
Yeah,
point.
that
Yes.
make a lot of sense.
Yes.
Because I was wondering why, but then you pointed it out.
And that's
So-
why what's happening one of the things that I think some artists in the mainstream, such as like a guy like Drake, is realizing is, okay, Toronto has a culture, but it's not. There isn't enough people that are in that culture. So if we get together with the UK,
Right.
they have a similar culture. There's a lot of
Yes.
Caribbeans there, a lot of
Yes.
Africans there, a lot of similar culture. If we can somehow combine with them, we can maybe create a bigger
Spread out.
impact.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But it's hard to Americans, because America's where most of the stuff is,
Yeah.
happening. Whatever. Americans really want to. They're not really open to people that don't sound like them. Like it's hard. For them.
You have figured it out.
Right.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
you're right. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you can. I think they don't mind the Canadians because we kind of sound similar to them.
Yes.
But when you start bringing in the UK, they're like, okay, these guys, I can't understand them.
Or even the Jamaicans, because Bob Marley had a rough time.
Yeah.
And not just Bob Marley, all the Jamaican artists in my time, they would go to UK
Yeah.
to start their music before heading to America, because America would just not open the doors.
They don't get it.
Yeah.
Didn't get
So it's tough. It's really tough, but one has to persevere and just keep pressing and pushing. Because Drake made it big. He's probably the biggest
he's one of the
hip
biggest
hop
artists,
Yeah,
period.
yeah. And so we have quite a few big names here now. Yeah, we have quite a few big names here.
Sure.
Weekend is doing, even though he's not hip hop, but
Yeah, he's still part of the. He's not hip hop, but he's still part of the.
he's a part of the
Part of the
yeah,
culture.
Yeah.
and he's doing very good. So
Yeah.
Those guys are all. I mean, Drake does live here as well, but those guys are all doing their thing in the U.S. Right?
yes,
So
yeah,
it's hard. There's talent. I once had a professor because I went to a music school called Harris, and I had a professor who was the head A&R at Sony, and he said that Nelly Furtado had brought this song "I'm Like a Bird" to him,
Yes.
and he rejected it. And then she took that same song somewhere else, and she became huge.
huge. Yeah,
Yeah, and he said he was basically using that story to say there is definitely a lack of urban ears here that can recognize
Something.
Yeah.
what they
Yeah,
have when they
yeah,
have something.
yeah.
But the American, they'll come here and they'll be like, I see the potential in that.
Yeah.
Even a guy like Drake, I know so many people who know him
Yes.
who just said, oh, this guy's just an actor or whatever, and they never saw the potential, and then,
Yeah.
so.
You see, I think America is known for the entrepreneurial qualities. That Canada is just lacking at the
We're coming along
moment.
though, because we've seen so much.
We-
I missed it. Now we're I think the next generation is starting to come along now.
yeah.
So
Because I remember even in the gospel field, when artists here, great singers and musicians here, they want to do an album, they would go to the States and get a producer here. And when Tongues of Fire came about, we decided that no, we're going to do our own stuff. It might not be the greatest because we don't have the resources and stuff, but we're going to try. And we were one of the first group, pretty much, I can say that started doing our own thing. And then I noticed that a lot of guys start doing it now by staying here and doing their own production.
Right. Because we even was nominated at the Juno, Tongues of Fire. So,
Yeah.
And back in the, what was it, 95? I remember because that's Aaron's birthday. In 95, 96, that's when we did the album. And yes.
Yeah, we produced it ourselves. Yeah, while other guys would go and pay big money in the States to get a producer to come over here to produce their song, and it sounds like American stuff.
But when
So
it comes
what's the
to-
sense in that?
when it comes to the actual production and making of the music now, it's easier than ever as far as
Oh, yes.
because of the internet, because of the
Yeah.
all these things you can do. You can literally record an album in your bedroom. I have,
Exactly.
and it can become an album that wins awards and all
Oh,
that kind of stuff.
of course, yeah.
It's not like before where you had to book time in an expensive studio, and I mean, if you can do that, that's still good. But now you can just start with what
because
you have.
equipment, because technology is on an explosion now, and so it's easier now to do these things, and you can get away with a lot of stuff by just doing it
And
yourself.
not only that, but you can collaborate with people. For example, on my last album, well, my second last album technically, I have a song with Papa San.
Okay.
And that song was, he was in Florida,
Wow.
I was in Toronto.
Amazing.
I was right here in Toronto, and we just talked on the phone. And then before, you know, I met him after that, but I hadn't met him at that time yet. And I had a song with him out, and I had never met him.
Yes.
But because of just technology,
Yeah.
I could stay in Toronto. He can be in Florida where he is,
Yes.
and we make a song together.
That's amazing.
Great, great.
We almost shot the video, but then COVID and so on.
Yeah. COVID spoiled a lot of things.
Yeah.
At that note, we're going to take a little break here, and we're going to be back with part 2 of this great interview with Drew Bex.